Greetings everyone, this is Rambling Collector here, and welcome back for another comic review. The subject of today's video, the Absolute DC Comics series of Absolute Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. And the title of today's video, Flip the Script. And I think with what we are covering today, that title more than fits. Now I've been hearing about the Absolute DC Comics series for a while, how it all started with the story of All In, some of the various different characters that are going to be covered in here, but more so just the different bits and pieces of the different stories that are being told for these characters, how their backstories have been flipped, how the script has been changed for them. And I was honestly very excited to check it out. So, with that being said, we're going to be covering each of these three with my personal thoughts on them, starting, of course, with Absolute Batman. So first and foremost, Absolute Batman by Scott Snyder. This one, from the get-go, changes Batman's story from being an orphan child with a vast wealth to being a working-class citizen having to build himself as Batman from the ground up, building himself as less of a lean fighter and more of a brutal tank. Now, some of the major things that I do like about this Batman being changed is that instead of growing up in a house with a butler to help take care of him and raise him, he instead grows up with his mother still, but on the streets of Crime Alley, actively making friends with folks like Oswald Cobblepot. Of course, all of these becoming the various different villains that he would have to face. Edward Nygma, Harvey Dent, even Waylon Jones, all of whom become, respectively, Killer Croc, the Penguin, the Riddler, and Two-Face. Which to me, that was already a major change, having him growing up and being friends with some of these various different people who would become future villains, but also Bruce still having a living parent with him to help guide him and change him. Granted, he's still very traumatized by the fact that his father was shot by a random crook during a school trip to the zoo, of all places. Yikes, first of all. But then, seeing how he builds himself up as the new Batman to take on this corrupted Gotham was super fun to see. Watching Alfred as well, acting as a secret British agent. Him just analyzing Batman and giving us the scope of just what Bruce has been up to. How he not only breaks things, but he also rebuilds them later on. Not to mention his armaments, of course. That being, I mean, look at him. He's built like Bane, pre-Venom, so he acts more like a tank. Not to mention also the fact that he has like spiked shoulder pads and he's wielding a battle axe, which is sharp enough to be able to cut limbs, but even then, Batman still has his no-kill rule. Now, he's not afraid to chop off some arms and leave you with more than a few broken bones, but he still will not kill when it comes down to it. Hell, he even went ahead and dismantled a shotgun that Alfred was carrying and repurposed it to be non-lethal. That alone is insane to me, and it just shows more of Batman's genius. But more than that, one major thing that I've really enjoyed is how much more over-the-top Batman's villains are in this particular series, particularly Black Mask and the Joker, who have been showcased here. But because of this, it raises the stakes much higher than normal. And that is a theme that I'm seeing here with the Absolute Universe. These villains go much farther. They hold more of the cards than the heroes do. And because of this, the heroes have to fight all the harder for it. With Absolute Batman, however, I feel that there's more than a little bit of sadism, which I'm sure a lot of fans are pointing out. I have not even covered some of the other major villains that will crop up, but I will be doing that in a future video whenever Volume 2 does come out. But just with Absolute Batman, okay, one other thing that I did find was absolutely insane is the fact that his Batmobile is not a car. It is a repurposed construction vehicle. A massive dump truck has been converted into a Batmobile, which he can turn into an armored transport. And to me, that is just crazy. I was loving every second of reading this one, and I cannot wait to pick up Volume 2. But let's move on to the next one, shall we? Next up, we have Absolute Superman by Jason Aaron. This one, I can personally say, I did not know what to expect whatsoever with this one. But Superman not only having a living suit acting as a protective armor as well as a monitor on his powers, but also having Kal growing up on Krypton before it explodes, that was a welcome change to his origin, in my personal opinion. We all know the main story of Superman. He was launched from Krypton as it was dying as a baby. Brand newborn, just launched into space and sent to Earth. But in this one, Superman here, he does not have the Kents. He does not have the Fortress of Solitude. He has nothing. So he's been forced to be in hiding, working with some of the various underclass people, being forced to work for the company known as Lazarus. And quite frankly, the Lazarus Company just having its fingers in everything, controlling the media, all with the aid of Brainiac and being run by Ra's al Ghul. That definitely led to some terrifying but also interesting comparisons to stories such as 1984 by George Orwell. I noticed that heavily while reading through this comic, especially when Lois Lane, who appears, is physically writing out her story instead of having it being monitored or reporting it to the Brainiac system, which would edit what she was trying to say. And that is the whole thing of the Lazarus Company, keeping control. But with Superman, he is a formal anomaly. He is a threat to this overarching power, and he's inspiring people and giving them hope, the same as he normally does in the Prime universe. But in this one, I just love the idea of it, of having him personally seeing his home just dying around him as his parents are trying to build an escape ship for not only him, but also for some of the various labor class of people that he grew up with. And that was a nice little change on Krypton's part, having the Science Guild being the overarching power and controlling everything, being the privileged elite, while having Superman being part of the labor class. So already teaching him to be humble, as well as teaching him how to stand up for what's right. I personally was really excited to see more of this one, especially with the reveal of Ra's al Ghul being a villain for Superman in this particular time period instead of a Batman villain, which I felt was a nice little change, in my opinion. But it remains to be seen of what's going to happen here, but especially seeing Brainiac just running everything behind the scenes, I am very terrified to see just what's going to happen with this Superman, because having him already with unstable powers at times to the point that he needs to be monitored by a living artificial intelligence suit is a terrifying prospect, to say the least, but I am very eager to see just what's going to happen next here. But let's move on to the next and final book. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Absolute Wonder Woman by Kelly Thompson. Now, to give a little bit of backstory here, I've never been the biggest Wonder Woman fan, like full honesty. Most of the biggest ones that I've seen her for is either in the Justice League cartoon, which I love her in, by the way, but also her Injustice incarnation, which I am not a fan of. But Absolute Wonder Woman, diving into her story, it just checked all the boxes for an amazing story. Not just as Wonder Woman, but just a really good superhero story in general. Not to mention, I'm a major sucker for Greek mythology or any of the other pantheons like Norse, Roman, all of it. So seeing how our Wonder Woman here in Absolute Wonder Woman being raised in hell by Circe, a well-known sorceress within Greek mythology, not only growing as a warrior but also learning various magics, was such a surprise, but one I thoroughly enjoyed, especially with the theme of sacrifice in play throughout this collection. That is not something that this comic shies away from. That for whatever you try to do, some actions require great sacrifice. And in fact, mild spoiler, if you have not seen the comic, that tattoo on Wonder Woman's arm that you see here on the front cover, that is not a normal thing. That is actually magic, because that arm that she is using is an artificial one. She sacrificed her right arm to help Steve Trevor escape from hell and get back to the land of the living. And that alone showcases how deeply her character cares about people, her deep sense of compassion, her willingness to sacrifice what she might hold dear, as well as the hope that she can inspire in others to do better, be better. Now, I will say, this actually ties to my other point, Diana's character, which was a lot of fun to see in this story, between her switch of a fierce warrior to a compassionate person, despite growing up where she did, as well as not being afraid to square off against Hades himself. That all made for a very engaging read. I'm not gonna lie to you, watching her stand face to face against Hades, daring him to try and stop her from either saving her mother or trying to do what was right, was a lot of fun to see that part. I will say this much, this Wonder Woman does not mess around, and she definitely does have a wrath that you do not want to incur. And I feel like with Absolute Wonder Woman, we're going to see her doing more of the big monster fighting, which is normally reserved for Superman. Superman is going to feel, I think, as more low to the ground, trying to stay in hiding while trying to change the system with the poor people, trying to help those who are suppressed. Wonder Woman will inspire hope in a bigger way by taking care of some of the major monsters, is what I feel. And quite frankly, this Absolute Wonder Woman is a badass, combining the fact that she has magical lassos as well as a massive cleaver sword, which is giving me such berserk vibes. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to see more of her story personally, especially whenever the next volume comes out. But that being said, let's keep going, shall we? Now, of course, with a great story, there's also going to be some great artwork. And by gods, every single series that I've read here, from Absolute Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, all of them look amazingly well done. From Batman running through the streets with the dark colors of Gotham, Superman, of course, having what looks like liquid lava appearing on his wrist at some points, but also Absolute Wonder Woman just being as she is. The artwork itself really sold the story for me and really made me want to keep reading more of it, just to see more of this gorgeous work on the page. Quite frankly, I say it really stands out really well. This mix of dark and occasionally bright colors really just highlights how the Absolute Universe is very different from many of the other DC comics that we have seen, at least in my personal opinion. So, random thoughts here for a second here. I do know about some of the DC Elseworlds, especially the Dark Knight's Metal, which in my opinion was way too much saturation for the Batman and character, especially seeing all those different dark universal types of his. That was a bit much. This one, however, really speaks out well to me. I don't know, maybe I'm just a sucker for alternate retellings of different characters. Because that is one thing that I do like. How can we take this particular character and how can we flip their script? How can we change their backstory to either make their story far more challenging or changing them as a character? How can we do that without breaking the essential formula that people have grown up with? And I really like how, despite all the challenges and the differences that they will have here, they still remain who they are to their core, at the very least. Batman rising up from personal tragedy, trying to heal a city that is so corrupted on a one-man crusade, to try and save his city that he still loves despite how much it takes. Wonder Woman continuing to inspire others to be better, even now, despite growing up in the worst possible place, with hell. But more than that, also, Superman being part of the labor class, now seeing and trying to be a champion for them. I really do like where this is all going to go, and I'm very eager to see just how the Absolute Universe will run itself. Again, maybe I am a sucker for just alternate retellings or different universes in a sense. Hell, one of my favorite ones is actually the Injustice series, which I need to make a video on that sometime. Just the comics in general at this point. Not even the games, just the comics. because they were really well done, and I'm surprised I haven't made a video on them sooner. So be forward to look into that in the future. But again, I am just very excited to see just how these stories are going to go forward, especially with these three. These three are some of the big poster children of DC Comics, and I really cannot wait to see more of them. But also, there's more coming from the Absolute Universe with Martian Manhunter, who I feel does not get enough love. And of course, we're also getting Green Lantern, Flash, and so many more that I cannot wait to see. But more than that, I have also dove into the little one-shot known as, pardon me here for a second, Absolute Evil, which shows the forming of the Absolute Justice League. However, all of these characters are some of the most well-known rogues. Ra's al Ghul, the Joker, and so many others all coming together to form their own little Absolute Justice League to keep the status quo, to keep these heroes from rising up and doing what is right. Hell, we even see Absolute Hawkman and Green Arrow within this one, which I am not happy to see my personal favorite Green Arrow getting killed off so easily within a single first issue, which is why I'm really hoping they do bring him back in some way, shape, or form. I don't know yet. We'll see. But this just goes to show not all heroes are safe. And in fact, over the course of Absolute Evil, we see how many heroes actually wind up getting bought out. And this is to keep the status quo of this universe going. Hell, Absolute Joker is aware that there is something with the Omega Particle, which you will know is related to Darkseid. And that was one of the big twists I was not expecting, is that this entire universe was created by Darkseid, which is one reason why I really need to read All In sometime and do a review on that as well. But I think I've sung enough praises for this, so I think we all know what the scores are going to be here. So let's move on to that, shall we? So overall, Absolute Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, all of them score 10s out of 10s for me. All across the board, I really love the stories that they got going here. The artwork is amazing. And if anything, I feel like I'm going to be sticking with these series for a while, and you will be seeing more reviews of the Absolute Universe on this channel going forward, just to warn you all ahead of time. But for those of you who stuck around to the very end of the video, thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to me. And if you have any other comment recommendations that you would want for me to cover sometime, please feel free to let me know. I'm always open to suggestions. But more than that, if you all have read these little collections here, tell me your thoughts in particular. Who's your favorite? Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman? Do you have any thoughts on these as well? I'd love to have a conversation with you all in the comments about this. But more so, thank you all again for listening. This is Rambling Collector, signing off for now, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a great day, fellow readers.